service insert, but this is from 1 Corinthians. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand miraculous signs, and Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength. So far, this is the portion of the word of our Lord. I have to give some credit to the LCMS youth. They sort of helped me out with my sermon introduction this week. If you're not aware, they had their big youth gathering, I think it was towards the end of last week, I want to say, and it kind of wrapped up for the weekend. I'm not exactly sure. And they happened to have it in the city of Minneapolis. You ever been to Minneapolis? It's in Minnesota. You're really not missing much. But it's a big city, right? And what was amazing about it was you had all these youth there, and you know, the LCMS is the second biggest Lutheran church, and I'm going to put Lutheran in quotation marks here, but they're the second biggest Lutheran church body in the United States, right? So they brought quite a bit of youth. They overshadow our AALC youth gathering. There's no doubt. And they all, of course, had their t-shirts on, and so everyone knew who they were and why they were there. And they're youth, so they're making all kinds of noise, and they're all over the city, and they're probably on public transportation or whatnot. And you know what? It irritated me. There were people who got upset, not because they were being loud and obnoxious, but because of who they were. And most of the people that were irritated, who were responding on social media and stuff like that, guess what? Drum roll, Lutherans. Other Lutherans who were looking at them and saying, these kids are so brainwashed. They're so conservative. They have no idea. They just don't. Those people who like to use the term, and we've all heard it before, that's not the Jesus I know, right? Which is the Jesus that's in the Bible. The one that is reflected really in all 66 books of these scriptures, right? They say, no. God's changed now. God's different. You had people call themselves Christians who were looking at these LCMS youth and saying they're fools. That was foolish to them. They saw them as brainwashed. They said, why on earth would you want to actually believe everything that God says here in His Word? They called them fools, and they didn't even care that they were the youth. They still felt that same way. It's very similar to the people during Paul's day, and all that they already looked at God's wisdom as foolishness, right? Now, God says, He quotes here He quotes the book of Isaiah, actually. He says, the wisdom of the wise I will destroy. And He said, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Okay? So we have two different words here in Greek. The word for wisdom, by the way, is Sophia, and that's the word that really means that this is how you answer life's biggest questions. Why are we here? What are we doing? You know, what is the purpose of mankind and all that? And if you guys recall, when Paul was in Athens, right, it said that in the book of Acts, which was written actually by Luke, but he says all people did there all day long was just sort of stand around and talk about their ideas. This was the wisdom. These are like the Greek philosophers that you think of. These are the people who are trying to answer all of life's biggest questions. Well, fast forward that to today. Do we still have wisdom today? Absolutely. Absolutely. This kind of wisdom that God says He's going to destroy one day, you believe me, you better believe me. Right? We sit there and we tell people as a church, and we sound like a broken record when we do this, and by the way, I make no apologies for that, but we preach Christ crucified. We say, what is the answer? What is really, truly wisdom? And we say that Jesus, here, I want to tell you something. Jesus died for your sins, and the world goes, no, that's not it. No. I've got more wise options than that. How many world religions are out there, right? And many of these people, I'm convinced, by the way, that there are many people that practice Eastern religions and things like that who grew up in Christian homes because they simply got tired of being told, guess what? This is where it's at. This is what we're supposed to stand. We're actually right. I tell my kids this all the time, having gone to public schools, especially back in Illinois. I say, it's okay to be right. Okay? You don't have to be arrogant about it, but it's okay for you to be right when in the face of a lot of people who are wrong, right? But this is what wisdom is, and what the world likes to turn to is like a world religion. Or maybe no religion at all. I don't need that, right? It's just, I'm just going to live my life. Or possibly even atheism. Not only am I not going to follow a set of beliefs, not only am I going to get in my car on a Sunday morning and go somewhere, I don't even think that this whole earth exists from a God. So, or paganism. That's the new one, right? Especially earth-based religions and stuff like that. So the world wants to find wisdom and all of these different answers, and God says, I will destroy it. This calls to mind Jesus when he teaches about the many that walk on that broad highway, right? They think that's wisdom. They think that they found that. They think they found something in all this, but it leads to a dead end. And then he says, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. The Greek word for intelligence, by the way, it literally means like piecing things together. This is actually intelligent. This is the smart people. This is like your engineers, your people that make all the newest cell phones, all this other stuff. This is like your Bill Belichick's of the world, right? Who can craft such a master plan for a football game that he can win a Super Bowl with like a 126-year-old quarterback, right? That's what this kind of intelligence is, and all that. Now, this is not God saying that being smart isn't a good thing. Kids, school's coming. You still want to pay attention in school. You still want to do it. And remember, Solomon asked the Lord for wisdom, and he was one of the smartest people throughout history, probably the smartest person throughout the world's history, right? So it's not that intelligence is a bad thing, but when people turn to their own intelligence at the expense of God and say, I got this, well, he's going to frustrate them. And let's be honest, looking at some of the comments that I saw, especially from other people in regards to the LCMS youth and some of the stuff like that, and some of the vitriol that was out there, does the wisdom of the world and the intelligence of the world ever intimidate us? Does it ever get to the point to where we're like, you know what, I just won't even bring it up? These people need to hear about Christ crucified, and I'm just going to now, because I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want people to just start calling me, you're such a fool, or whatever it is. Does it ever shut our mouths? And I can tell you, I'm not immune to it. It does me, right? Or is there ever a hotbed issue that is being discussed, maybe even just among family members, people that we're close with, and we know, right, that God has spoken quite clearly in His Word. It's not the popular, right? It's not the popular stance or the popular opinion, but He's been clear about it. But we're just like, you know what? I don't even want to open that up. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying run out and look for fights. I'm not saying, but there comes a time when God gives us an opportunity to stand up for His truth, and to be quite honest, we're going to be called fools for it. I was just talking about this just recently, that we're not very good at living in these last days, are we? We're really not that good at it. We sit there and watch people like in this particular LCMS youth thing, and our immediate inclination is just to fire back. We act so shocked that people would actually hate us. And I tell people, guess what? Jesus, He said, people are going to hate you because of me. So this is not shocking to us when we see the world treat us this way, but does it ever affect our holiness? I know it does mine. And instead, we preach Christ crucified, and thankfully we did. He says that for the Jews, this was a stumbling block, right? You have to understand, for the Jews, who Paul called himself, by the way, a Hebrew of Hebrews, right? He knew about Judaism, and he knew about that. Well, what was their mode of making God happy? It was the Mosaic law, right? They had laws, and then they had ceremonial laws, and then they came up with like 600 more some laws in the Talmud and all this other stuff. Their idea was, you do this, and then you make God happy. This is how you please God. This idea that He would send His Son to be crucified for them, and that would be the only bridging gap between mankind and heaven. That was a stumbling block to them. They didn't get that. That got in the way of their laws. By the way, pretty much every world religion out there follows the same path, don't they? I tell people, there's only two religions in the world. There's the one that says we have to please our God or gods or goddesses or whoever they might be, and here's how. They have these tenets for us. We follow these commandments. We worship them in this way, and then we end up pleasing them, and they let us into whatever Valhalla there is afterwards, right? Or there's the one that says God did it all for you. God sent his son to the earth to die on the cross for your sins. You do nothing. And he says this Christ crucified for the Greeks it was foolishness to them. So the Greeks looked at it, their gods, by the way, if you know anything about Greek mythology and some of their gods, and by the way, my last reading of any Greek mythology was like high school, so I'm not really going on any great memory here, I think. But it seemed like they really didn't want much to do with people unless it was like Zeus and the women, I guess, apparently. But they still didn't want much to do with their creation. They were there, and creation was sort of here type of thing. And that's how they were. So for the Greeks, the idea that God would come down in the womb of a human mother, that he would want to be a part of the very creation that he was a part of making, to them, that was just foolish. What kind of God would want to do that? What kind of king would want to die for his most unworthy subjects? It was complete foolishness. But for us, it's the power and it's the wisdom of God. They can make fun of us like they make fun of the LCMS here, and believe me, they're gonna, but we know what Christ crucified actually means for us. In fact, what it actually means for the entire world. That he died on that cross to take away every single one of our sins, including, by the way, those sins of us not being bold for him. He took those away as far as the east is from the west. He did everything for us. And you know what that is? That's absolutely brilliant. That he died when we could not die. That he lived the perfect life we couldn't do and exchanged it on the cross for us, taking every single one of our sins, and then picked up his life again. So we know that we are forever in the hands of a capable and a brilliant God that the rest of the world sees as completely foolish. We belong to him. So as the world goes on and tries to find its own wisdom, we still preach Christ crucified. They don't want to hear it, we get it. But guess what? We got to tell them. And we continue to do this, and they won't listen to us. Instead, they prefer their own ignorance. And I can say this, that when it comes to salvation, ignorance is by no means bliss.